I'm going to jump right into this. This is going to be about DNRs, do not resuscitate, advance directives, and the reason I want to talk about this is because it seems to be something that no one wants to talk about. And people who have someone in their life that is going to die or is dying, it's a conversation you're going to have. So the fact that no one wants to talk about it, but it has to be discussed anyway, kind of makes it even harder. Basically, I have 2 children with a terminal illness, and the COD, which is medical term for, that's just an acronym for cause of death, is respiratory failure. So I've had to make, my husband and I have had to make decisions regarding end-of-life care for our children. Now, I say us because I'm an analyst and I like to know exactly what is going to happen. I like to think about all the what ifs and then come up with all of the reactions and all of the possible outcomes for all of the what ifs. It's a helpful tool, but it is also something that can drive you crazy. But I digress. Because I'm the analyst, my husband at first said, "You're the one that does all the research. Whatever you think we should do, that's what we'll do." And I said, "Absolutely not. We are going to make these decisions together because I don't want to make these decisions and my husband resent me later on for doing too much or not doing enough for our children." So it is imperative that if you want to keep your marriage together, you need to make these decisions together. You need to communicate with each other, because there are very different sides to this kind of decision, okay? Let's talk about advance directives in general. People make these decisions in secret, in private, and they don't tell anybody what they've decided to do, because it doesn't matter what you pick. There is always going to be someone who is on the other side of the fence that thinks that you're doing the wrong thing. So this is mostly for people who might be losing a child. I feel like it's a little bit different than making decisions about end-of-life care for an 80 or 90-year-old person who has lived their life. Now, the reason people don't want to talk about it is it's painful. Who wants to talk about their kid dying? It's emotional. Most people can't get through this conversation without crying. And it's also not something that you want to think about, because a lot of us, and when I say us, I mean parents, are in denial. I know I seem like I'm rambling. I have a point to this, I promise. It angers me that it is such a taboo subject. they're going to sit you down and they're going to say, okay, what do you want us to do? And what do you want us to not do at the end of your child's life? Now, as parents, our main objective is to keep our children alive. Don't play in traffic. Don't drink bleach. Don't go in the river if you can't swim. If a stranger says he's got candy or a puppy, don't get into his van. The other part of parenting is to make sure you don't raise an asshole, but that is a conversation for a different day. So anyway, in my opinion, I think a lot of parents make decisions based on that. There are two sides here. The ones that say, I don't ever want to lose my kid, so I will do everything in my power to make sure they stay alive. And that means intubation, do a trach, which is an incision here, and a breathing tube, so it bypasses your, you can't choke on, it opens your airway, basically. But what they don't tell you is, if you decide on a trach, your mouth and your nose are natural filters for your lungs, so they protect your lungs from a lot of the bacteria and germs that could get in there. And so when you have a trach, you are bypassing your natural filters. And so even though it's supposed to be helping you breathe, it also opens up your lungs to all of the bad stuff, and you're more prone to respiratory infections. So for my kids, the cause of death is usually respiratory failure. So the trach is probably not the best idea. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm squirreling. I go down rabbit holes sometimes. There are two sides. And so on the other side of that is the parents who decide against Herculean efforts. A G-tube is considered a Herculean effort. And when Riley lost several pounds in a very short amount of time, they approached me and said, she's going to die. She needs a G-tube because she is not getting the nutrition that she needs. She's not getting the hydration that she needs. But you don't have to get one. I don't have to get one. You can legally just let your kid starve to death. So I think that puts me in between both sides of that coin there. I got my kids the G-tube. We were hesitant with Riley, but it made such a big difference that when Harrison started showing signs, we went ahead and got him the surgery sooner, because we knew that it was going to be what was best for him. Anyway, I'm getting off track, and I've already wasted 10 minutes of your time, and I apologize. People don't want to talk about it. And they can't talk about it without getting emotional or combative or confrontational or embarrassed or feeling guilty or feeling shame for the decisions that they've made. I don't think that children should be kept alive at all costs. I don't think anyone should. I think quality matters more than quantity. So I think the quality of life is what matters the most. Not how long they live, but how well they live. And at some point, we need to decide for ourselves. We need to look at what we are doing and be truthful with ourselves and say, okay, are we doing this to our children, or are we doing this for them? Are we doing this medical procedure because we can, or because we should? Now, doctors are fixers. They went into medicine because they want to be able to help people. They want to save people. They want to fix people. So they can't breathe? Put in a breathing tube. There you go. But is that what's best for the quality of life? And I've never been super confrontational. I do call people out when they say I should just let my kids die, because I think that that's really rude to say to somebody, especially when there's no plug to pull on my kids. And people have said, as long as the decision comes from love, you won't make the wrong decision. But whose love? Is it love of having a child? Love of not having to plan a funeral? Love of keeping your family intact? Or is it the love of your child and wanting what's best for them? I think that people should be able to talk openly about the decisions they need to make about their children's lives and what happens towards the end, because my kids, they're not doing that great right now. Matter of fact, as you can see, I'm in the living room. It's midnight. I'm in here because Riley has been choking all day. I'm sorry when I'm not yawning because I'm tired. Sometimes I can't breathe. When I'm having a little bit of anxiety, so I kind of yawn because I feel like I can't get a deep breath, a full breath. Like there's just there's some things sitting on my chest. So I'm sitting here saying how angry I am that it's taboo to talk about it, and I'm still sitting here beating around the bush. So I'm not going to do that anymore. 15 minutes later, I apologize. We've decided against intubation. We've decided against trachs. We've also decided against compressions for CPR. Our children have scoliosis. Harrison has weak bones. The endocrinologist diagnosed him with weak bones. Riley does not have weak bones, but her scoliosis is so bad that her rib cage is deformed. And if their hearts were to stop and they had compressions performed on them to bring them back, if you do CPR correctly, you're probably going to be breaking ribs. And my children are already dealing with a lot. And I don't want to bring them back to deal with all of the symptoms of their disease and broken ribs. I don't think that that would be coming from a place of love. A trach is an incision here with a tube, and I think that's a good decision for kids that have a life expectancy. But children that don't have a very long life expectancy, I don't think that's the best idea. Because like I said earlier, you're bypassing all of the natural filters. You're introducing more bacteria to the lungs. But now you've taken this terminal child who has a limited amount of time on this earth, and you have diminished the amount of that time because now they are recovering from a surgery, and now they have another hole in their body that has to be taken care of, that has to heal. It's not fair, I don't think. And my kids, they already have diminished lung capacity, and they already have respiratory issues and pneumonia, so going under anesthesia is not safe for them anyway, and they would have to be under anesthesia, obviously, to have, their tracheas opened up. We've also decided against ventilators, and that's when they take a tube in your mouth and they put it into your lungs, and it breathes for you. My husband was intubated. Okay, so that's not a ventilator, I'm sorry, it's intubation. My husband was intubated, and he was in a coma for several weeks before we got married. And I was in the hospital with him every day. I was by his side. And I woke him up from his coma to have the tube pulled out. I don't want to put my kids through that at all. Because once you're intubated, they're usually going to sedate you, because most people fight that tube because it's in your lungs, it's down your throat, like you can't swallow. You feel like you can't breathe. So you're sedated. So what kind of quality of life is that? Now, obviously, we did intubation for Jason because one of his lungs collapsed, and it was something that he could come back from. So I think intubation is a fantastic tool for a temporary issue, as long as it's not the rest of their life, because then that's when you have a plug to pull. It's easier to just not do things than it is to stop doing things. Once you get them on a trach and you get them on a ventilator and something's breathing for them, it is a lot harder to stop that than it is to just not do it at all. And I don't want my kids to be in surgery and recovering and be in pain. And it would also impact some of, like, the way that I hold them. They're very floppy, so they would just, pull on it. Anyway. And I know that there are people that are going to be upset with me for that. How dare you say these things, or how dare you give up on your children, or how dare you let them suffer? I don't view it as letting them suffer. We gave them a G-tube because I didn't want them to starve to death, because I think that would be suffering. So there are two camps that are like save your kid, don't let them die, and it's selfish to keep your kid here. I think it's selfish to keep your kid here. Now, checking their oxygen, feeding them through a G-tube, suctioning them so they don't choke to death. I don't think those are Herculean efforts to keep them alive. I think that is just maintaining their quality of life right now because they are still communicative and they are still aware, and I don't want them to die from something that is preventable, because then that's when guilt and blame and shame comes in. But I think that people should be able to talk about this with each other, with their families. I talked about this with my family, and I got mixed reactions. Some people were upset with me. Some people agreed with me. And I don't think that's fair. It's not their kids. They're not sitting here every day watching them get worse, watching them decline, studying their every move to see if they're still breathing. Their stomach doesn't drop every time their child spikes a fever, because you're thinking they have another infection. Is this what's going to end their life? So I don't think that anyone should judge a parent or the decisions they make for end-of-life care. I plan on letting my kids have a good life, and I'm not going to waste any of the rest of the time that they have with them being in the hospital, recovering from surgeries. When the time comes, we are going to put them on hospice. We are going to make sure that they are comfortable and surrounded by people that love them. I am not going to force them to stay on this earth and continue suffering, because I know that they're in pain. We're managing that pain. We give them meds. I can tell when they're in pain. It's kind of an intuition thing. And a lot of people say, I wouldn't want to live like that. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, murder is illegal, so I can't really, what do you mean to do? So people who are like, you should just let your kids go, they're kind of right. I do plan on letting them go when they tell me that they're ready. I'm not going to force them to stay alive because I don't want to lose a kid. I'm not going to put them through more medical procedures or more pain or more things that are going to limit their quality of life just to make sure they live longer. And honestly, I was really scared to share this with people because my husband and I made this decision a while ago. We decided because we didn't want to have to make heat of the moment emotional decisions, because those are the ones that you're going to regret. We wanted to make informed decisions with a cool head so that when the time comes, we will know we made the decision that we made based on the information that was given with the best of intentions. And I feel like that will lead to less what ifs and less grief about, did I do the right thing? And I was scared to share that because I didn't want people to judge me. But I don't care anymore. I want to normalize this. There are people making these decisions every day, and they're making them in secret because they can't talk to anybody about it, because they feel that they're going to be judged. And that's how I felt. My husband and I made these decisions, and we talked to the doctors about it, but we never told our families for the longest time because we were worried what they would say. And I don't think that's right. I don't think people should feel that way. I think it should be okay to make these decisions and have everyone support you. And I think that you should keep your own emotions out of it when someone tells you what they've decided. Because you can have your own opinion, but you need to shut the hell up. Because you're not living this life. You're not watching your kids go through something horrific, and you are not planning their funeral, and you are not living in hell. And so judging a parent for the decisions they're making that they feel are in the best interest of their child is not something that anybody should do. So I think that what I'm doing, that what my husband and I are doing is the right thing. But just because we put it down on paper on a DNR does not mean that it's written in stone. We can still change it. We can still change our minds. So there's a little bit of comfort in that it's not like, okay, you're stuck. You're stuck with this decision. And I'm really sorry that I have been talking for 30 minutes. And I guess I don't really care if anybody watches this. I am glad to have been able to get that out.